Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
On behalf of AARP in the Virgin Islands, via TV2, and Troy D. Shabir Schuster, the State Director of AARP in the Virgin Islands, Mr. Alvaro Pilar, via CEO, I bring greetings. I greet the Honorable Governor Kenneth E. Mapp, the Honorable, if I may, with the introductions first. I greet the Honorable Governor Kenneth E. Mapp, the Honorable Senator Janet Millen Young, candidate Albert Bryan Jr., candidate Soraya Diassi Colfelt, candidate Adla Fonsi Donastarg, candidate Warren Mosler, candidate Molito Smith, moderator Holland Redfield, and the timekeeper and Sergeant of Arms Willard John. I greet you, the audience. I extend a special welcome to all AARP members, volunteers, the AARP staff, and the viewing audience. I am Diane Capehart, the Associate State Director of Advocacy and Community Outreach of AARP in the Virgin Islands. Thank you. I am pleased to extend a very special welcome to all of our gubernatorial candidates. AARP is a nonpartisan organization, and we do not endorse political candidates nor coordinate with any candidate or political party. AARP is working to inform our more than 22,000 members in the Virgin Islands and the entire community to support a more engaged electorate and to make sure our members feel they're part of the process. AARP has a 32-year history of providing members and the public with information about candidate position so they may choose a candidate who best represents their views on the issues. AARP in the Virgin Islands strives today to inform members and the general public on candidate positions on GERS, healthcare, the economy, and long-term health care. Now, I have the honor of introducing our moderator, former Senator Holland Redfield, humanitarian, radio show personality, six-term senator, statesman. Mr. Redfield has played an active role in shaping and informing the destiny of St. Croix and the entire U.S. Virgin Islands for close to 50 years. As an elected official, Mr. Redfield consistently said, the difference between a statesman and a politician is that a politician works for the next generation. This philosophy has guided him throughout his political career and formulated his public policy decisions in the territory. Mr. Redfield, I now turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. You know, as I gaze my eyes on all of you throughout my career, I have never saw so many fine candidates, and I'm not doing that to pander you, seriously. And at a time in our history that we do have to be able to choose the very best in this room, okay, that is in front of me. I say to the audience, this is about the candidates and you as the voters. And what I want you to do with the utmost respect is honor these folks without jeering or up and down and whatever. It just is not gonna, I'm not gonna put up with it. I think this is a time also for the folks that are watching this on television and streaming the same thing. Now, I'm gonna cut my remarks. I'm supposed to have 2 minutes. If I give up some of mine, you get more. So at this point, I'm gonna put it to Willard John. Willard?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
The following are the rules and regulations for our
Gubernatorial Forum this evening. All candidates drew lots to determine their seating order that you see right now. Unfortunately for the candidates, there will be no restroom break during this 2.5-hour long event. Each candidate will be given the opportunity to answer each of the 4 questions in the following format. First, the initial answer, 2.5 minutes. Then a rebuttal, 1 minute. Then a redirect, 30 seconds. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to introduce him or herself at the beginning of the forum. Each candidate will be given 1 minute to make a closing statement at the end of the forum. Please be succinct in your answer. Please do not state the history or the problem. State the solution. Gubernatorial candidates may briefly introduce their running mate if they're in the audience. This one is very important. I'm going to repeat it twice. Please turn off your audible alerts on your cell phones. Once again, turn off your audible alerts on your cell phones. Foghorns and other noise makers are prohibited. No placards, billboards, or poster boards. This one is also important. Once we get started, no cheering or jeering from the audience. Once again, no cheering or jeering from the audience. We want you to focus on the questions that we provide and the answers that our candidates are given to us. So please be silent during the whole forum. Per UVI and AARP policy, campaign materials may not be distributed during the event, nor on the campus of the University of the Virgin Islands. This forum is scheduled to last 2.5 hours. Please adhere to the stated rules and guidelines and have an informative forum.
At this point, what I would like to do is all of the candidates have an opportunity from left to right to introduce yourselves. And once again, an opportunity for your running mates. And that's my advice to you. Recognize that they may not be with you if you don't, okay? Senator Nugget, sorry.
Thank you. Pleasant good afternoon to everyone. I'd like to first thank the AARP organization and their slogan, Real Possibilities, for having us here this afternoon. I think is exercising democracy in its true essence. I'd like to also congratulate you, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Redfield, you recently was conveyed with an honorary doctorate degree.
Yes.
Congratulations to you, that I think was absent from the introduction. I'd like to recognize my running mate, Senator Alicia Chucky Hansen, who's out there in the audience as well. I'd embark on saying, you know, I adopted a philosophy that says that it's not a person's duration in life that is most important, but a person's valuable contribution to life that truly counts. As we embark on this crusade as public servant of those who avail themselves to be public servants, and for many of you who have charted this course before us and made invaluable contributions to this community in enhancing conditions for the people of the Virgin Islands, and all done from your heart, we must say thank you. And it's often said that as we assume these positions as public servant, at times it's tagged as a thankless job. However, there's an old saying that someone's got to do it. I avail myself to run for governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands. You know, I'd like to reflect on my upbringing being that of my mom, who actually was employed in Pueblo Supermarket, Long Bay, St. Thomas, hailing from the island of Puerto Rico. My father, who was in fact an Army paratrooper, who returned to the Virgin Islands after service and embarked on public education, that of being the director of public education. I've been molded by these individuals and adopted the philosophy in knowing what the true definition of service is. I'm Donna Storg of the Donna Storg Hansen team, number 2 on the ballot. Thank you.
Candidate Smith.
Good afternoon. I am Alito A. Smith Jr., Healthcare Executive, Community Leader, and Independent Candidate for Governor, number 6 on the ballot, running with Mr. Hubert Lorenzo Frederick, who I would like to stand just to introduce him. Before I go on this, I always begin these by recognizing my wife of 20 years, Miss Athena Williams Smith. Can you please stand? Thank you. This is familiar grounds for me. I am a proud and longtime member, I guess as long as 2015, member of AARP, and also a executive volunteer member of his board. So I'm very familiar with these activities, and I'm very familiar with the role that AARP plays in the Virgin Islands. Chief among these issues are the issues of healthcare, retirement, and insurance. And there's no better time to have this conversation with this community, the 22,000 members of AARP than now. We have a healthcare crisis, we have a GRS crisis, and bar none, we have an insurance crisis. What I'd like us to focus on is the fact that we didn't get here overnight. We got here over many years by politicians of the past and by issues that led us to the present. I'm asking you to reset the clock, to give hope to our future generations and to ourselves, and that hope, I believe, is sitting here speaking to you at this time, Smith Frederick, number 6 on your ballot. Thank you.
Candidate Mosler.
Yes, I'm Warren Mosler, number 7 on the ballot, running with Ray Fonseca, who will be here. He's on the ferry coming across now, so he'll be here sometime around 6. I've been in finance 45 years. I think you all know me. Time is going to be very short, so I'm going to get right into one of our positions. And that is, if you look at this debate tonight, you are going to see critical debate. You're going to see candidates engaging each other. If you went to a senatorial debate, you would not see any of that. You never see a senator critical of another senator. Why is that? If we were senators, you would each have 7 votes. And one of these other people might be your favorites, getting your first vote. I want to get your 2nd, 3rd, or 4th vote. Okay, and so I'm not going to be critical of the other senators. That's the problem with our legislature. It's not their fault. It's what the Organic Act imposed on us, and the answer is districting. We reduced the Senate from 15 to 7. We have 3 districts on St. Croix, geographic districts, east, west, and middle. Frederiksted will get its own senator, and St. Thomas has 3 districts, and St. John has its own district with its own senators. Then you'll see at the senatorial elections, you'll each be voting for the senator in your district. You'll each have 1 vote. There will be a group of senators competing for your vote, and you will see the kind of critical debate that we're seeing here tonight. Okay, and so I'm Warren Mosler, lucky number 7 on the ballot, running with Ray Fonseca, asking for your vote. Thank you.
Senator Millen Young.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeanette Millen-Young. I am number 4 on your ballot on November 6th, along with Mr. Edgar Bengoa, who's right here with us. And we are pleased to offer ourselves to be your representatives. My history and my experience dealing with this particular organization is extensive. I am very pleased to share with you that I was awarded the 2016 Capital Caregivers Award by the AARP because of my service as an advocate in the legislature. Especially one of my signature bills has to do with the Uniform Guardianship Bill, which actually we have so many issues with our elderly and abuse and things that have to do with the estates. And so basically whatever protections that they have here in the Virgin Islands are portable, and they can, if they are living here, they have the rights. If they move to Florida, California, Colorado, they still have those benefits, those protections from the guardianship law. I also am very proud of my centenarians bill, which, you know, we are living longer and some of those issues are attached to the GRS. We have a lot of centenarians, and these are persons who have actually given much to our community, and so we award them a monetary gift at the age of 100. I have other bills that I will get into, hopefully, later tonight as my time is about to become, oh no, I still have one more, 30 seconds to let you know about my uniform law, which with having to do with the transfer and death for multiple bank accounts and also securities and investments. So a lot of times when folks get to a certain age, people, their own relatives, take advantage of them, and these types of laws actually protect them. This administration wanted to veto it. I'm thankful to my colleagues for having overridden them, and they're now law. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Diasi Kofelt.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Soraya Diasi Kofelt, number 3 on your ballot, and my running mate Dwight Nicholson is here. And we are running as no party or independent. Our campaign is one of vision, hope, and experience. Our vision is that we are the economic leader. We are the economic powerhouse in the Caribbean. We are the #1 place to live, work, and visit in the Caribbean. As I study great leaders around the world, I observe that they all had many things in common, but one thing most in common: they had a vision for where they wanted to take their people to. Our vision is a grand vision, which we would like to take the people of the Virgin Islands into the next decade, which is the decade of 2020. Our campaign is one of hope. Hope that we can turn around the beautiful Virgin Islands and become a prosperous community. And we are, Dwight Nicholson and I, are experienced. We are problem solvers. Dwight is a very experienced and knowledgeable engineer. Engineers are problem solvers. I've been a lawyer for many years, a judge for many years, also a mother, a small business owner, and what applies to especially this group is a caregiver to my late husband, who suffered from Parkinson's disease. For the last 6 years of his life, I personally took care of him, and I understand the hardships of caregivers. What we bring is vision, hope, and experience, and we bring the desire to serve you as public servants, to take self-service out of public service. And we want to make the Virgin Islands great, and we want to put your best interests first. As public servants, we will always think, what is in the best interest of the people of the Virgin Islands first? Not our self-interest, but the best interest of the people of the Virgin Islands. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Albert Bryan.
Good evening. My name is Albert Bryan, and I want to be your governor. I believe that we can make a Virgin Islands on 3 things: changing, now, and making it for all of us. Because I believe in collaboration and the great power of unity, I brought along with me none other than a 3-term Senator, Tregenza Roach. I would like to say special good evening tonight to him, and also to my family that's in the crowd, my lovely wife, Yolanda Bryan, and my daughter, Samaya. When we think about what we have to do in the Virgin Islands, we have a tremendous choice to make. And that choice is to continue to do the same thing over and over again and receive no results, or to change course now to create a better Virgin Islands for all of us. It has to be one that is driven by a vision and is purposeful, a vision that we could be the best in the Caribbean in tech, talent, and tourism. A vision that says that once and foremost, we can trust again our leadership in government. Because the first thing of the 10A of our platform is to, 1, restore trust and transparency in our government. The second thing is to make sure we take that trust and enhance and attract dollars, not only from the public, but from the private sectors. Once we have that trust, to recruit new business and investment to our shores in order to make better lives for Virgin Islanders. And once we have this money here, we put our people to work. We put them to work in every field of human endeavor, and we enhance every field of talent we can. And we do it all with technology that we have invested $120 million in. We can do it, Virgin Islands. The people that came here before us, that took down the mountains to make the ports, invested in education. the education that has come alive in a team of Tregenza Roach and I. I'm asking you to cast your vote for number 5, a new beginning for the Virgin Islands. A Virgin Islands for all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Kenneth Mapp.
Thank you very much. Good evening to everyone. I'd like to thank AARP and VIRE for hosting this event, and I'm really very pleased to be here. I'd like to introduce my running mate, who's no stranger, Commissioner, Executive Director of WTJX, a professor at the University of the Virgin Islands, Mr. Osbert Potter. Osbert Potter and I assumed this government in 2015, really right behind the heels of the national recession of 2012. We inherited a government with very, very little resources, and literally, like many of our families, was running a government that would work from paycheck to paycheck. We put our nose to the grindstone, selected a great team of Virgin Islanders, and began the process of rebuilding the Virgin Islands. And we've been able to amass private partnerships and amass dollars and resources to be able to meet obligations of this government, paying off outstanding union obligations, working with our federal partners to increase our Medicaid enrollment, and then going through 2 Category 5 hurricanes. This election is about the rebuild and rebirth of the U.S. Virgin Islands, about having a plan, working the plan, and really keeping and solidifying relationships in the national government to ensure that the resources needed for the complete rebuilding of the U.S. Virgin Islands can occur. Osbert Potter and I are number 1 on the ballot, and we believe we have demonstrated in a very strong way our tenacity and our ability to get the job done, and we will get the job done with your continued prayers and your support on November 6th. Number 1 on the ballot, Mapp and Potter.
Thank you very much. We're going to go on to the questions at this point. There are going to be a total of 4 questions. As we discussed when we were doing our briefing, if this is moving along, we're going to go to questions which will be rapid fire. And we have a bonus question, providing Holland does not overdo this as well, okay? Senator Dongastar will get the first question. And it's to do with the GERS. You're going to have 2 minutes and 30 seconds to do that question. Technically speaking, the GRS is insolvent. It is paying out more than it is taking in. It has an unfunded liability estimated as high as $4 billion. Some may agree or disagree. First question, and it's a 2-part question. What is your solution to stabilize the system? And the second part, what is your long-term plan to save the system? First is to stabilize it. Second, what is your long-term solution for the system? Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Good afternoon once again. First of all, I think when you review the GRS system, we must start recognize that the GRS system is an independent instrumentality. An independent instrumentality that consists of board members that serve on that board. We would first have to establish that the government must pay the contributions into the system on time. That's number 1. In terms of stabilizing, it is about us establishing public-private partnerships for the purpose of generating revenues, a portion that can be dedicated to the GRS system. You see, when you look at our past performance as this present administration, terminating over 1,000 people does not help the GRS system. Downsizing does not help, because what you're actually doing is diminishing, or the contributions to the system are going to be declined. We have to partnership on those public-private partnerships to also establish a revenue-producing programs. I'm looking forward to the day under Donna Stogg Hansen administration as we build out with even via NGN data centers, taking them away from competing with some of the local internet providers in that last mile, that we're able to lure major conglomerates like Google and other companies to the Virgin Islands, generating a significant amount of revenues that have been lost to places like Puerto Rico and other destinations that provide for that clouding outside of the Virgin Islands. You're talking about banking institutions, you're talking about even companies, EDC companies that do their first tier of clouding out the Virgin Islands will dedicate a percentage of those monies to the GRS system until the unfunded liability have been met. I think that the Dana Stork Hansen team, if you carefully review our platform, you'll note in there the types of public-private partnerships that we would like to establish here in the Virgin Islands. But also we have to consider that before we even embark on establishing public-private partnership, perhaps we need to redefine the way we do business. We must become a business-friendly environment. No, under the Dana Stork Hansen administration, I assure you, it is our intention to insist on issuing a business license in no more than 2 days. And with the EDC program, we're going to make sure that EDC certificates are issued in less than 6 months. Because I think when people invest in business, they expect a fast track and not to hinder progress. Dana Stork Hansen, number 2 on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Smith.
We begin first by ensuring that the prime sponsor of the plan, which is the government of the Virgin Islands, works with the legislature to identify a viable, sustainable funding source. So the Smith-Frederick administration would approach this in this manner. No one can say that we have a definitive approach to solving GRS because we didn't get here overnight. So our approach is this. Upon election, when we develop our transition teams, we will develop a transition team specifically for GRS. We will bring in the executive branch, the judicial branch, the legislative branch, the members of the independent instrumentalities that pay into GRS to identify what the options are. Now, for one, we know that there are insufficient numbers of active employees to retirees, and there is a need for a significant cash infusion. That is something that the executive must work with the legislature to identify in the short term. After we have this transition approach, the financial team of the Smith-Frederick administration will meet and look at what are all of the feasible options to submit a bill to the legislature within the first 90 days. Stabilizing the system would require a collaboration of all of the stakeholders, because in that there are issues of equity, there are issues of fairness. We have a government where we have the same employees doing the same types of jobs, but are getting different retirements because of the tier system. So we must ensure that we put parity and equity in this approach. Long term, we must move from a defined benefits program to a defined contribution program. We need to transition to some type of 401 type program, and this is something I know can happen because at my establishment, we moved from GRS to a 401 program. With the input of all the stakeholders, we can move this in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Candidate Moser.
Okay, well, I do have a specific plan. I've been in finance 45 years and consultant to some of the largest pension funds in the world. So let me just fire it off here. Number one, the unfunded liability is overstated. We are different than the states. We get to keep our own income taxes. So when we pay GERS money out, a portion of it immediately comes back to the government as taxes. That's GERS money. It needs to stay in the GERS. If you get a $3,000 payment, you might pay $1,000 back to the government in payments. That $1,000 is GERS money that needs to stay in the GERS. That's $70 million a year in payments and that the GERS is currently making to the government. That accounts for over $1 billion of our lost money. It does shift the problem from the GERS to the government, but that's where the problem is. The problem is not in the GERS. It's been funding the government. Number two, the legislature and here authorized several years ago $600 million in rum cover-over bonds to put the money into the GERS and never sold them, okay? And today they can't be sold. Our credit rating is down. But what we can do is contribute those bonds directly into the GERS to add to the stocks and bonds the GERS already has. That roughly doubles the assets in the GERS and extends the life substantially. Okay, the third thing we can do. I was at the last GERS meeting at the hospital. It looked like there were 200 people who wanted their money back. I say give them their money back. And here's why. If you've been in the system, 1 minute, if you've been in the system for a number of years and maybe you put in $50,000 and you decide you want your money back, you don't want to take the risk, you don't like what you see, if we give you your $50,000 back, we are saving the system $100,000. The government matches roughly 2 to 1 what the employee has to put in. The unfunded liability has two components. It's the amount the employee had put in plus what the government's supposed to put in, which it hasn't. And so if the government gives you your $50,000 back, it saves $100,000. The liability goes down by 150,000, not just your 50,000. So yes, it loses the 50,000, but the amount it owes goes down, okay, by the additional money. So a couple of seconds here. The last thing the GRS can do, which is smaller, but it's still something, is to buy the delinquent property taxes from the government. This is particularly important for some place like St. John, where you have people with delinquent property taxes being forced out of their homes. When the GERS owns these, it likes to keep them for a long period of time. And I'll get back to this later.
Thank you very much. Candidate Millen Young.
Thank you for the question. Jeanette Millen Young, number 4 on the ballot, along with Edgar Bengoa. I believe that when people elect a governor, you don't elect someone who knows everything, but brings together a team of persons who have the knowledge. And so you should respect that. It's not a one-man show. And I personally believe that our GRS board has been doing a good job. I do believe that the trustees and the actuaries are doing a good job. The problem, and we get into the stabilizing, is that the plan sponsor has not paid on time. And so that to stabilize would be the first thing that my administration would do. We need to pay our bills on time, not just GRS, but all the bills that we need to pay. The long-term solution, well, we have to identify that recurring funding source that can actually pay into directly to the GRS. And sometimes we often in the legislature don't know the true numbers that the government has of funds in its coffers. But we don't have to wait 3 years to do what the court says you have to do. You pay your bills. Because every time you continue to allow your debt to increase, what happens is, just like your credit cards in your own homes, you continue to accrue interest. Don't tell professionals to go pack a lunch, meet with them. If they call you, answer the phone. If they write you a letter, return their correspondence. But for 3 years, this administration did not do that. My administration will certainly be far from those bad practices. Respectability goes a long way. Wisconsin in the United States of America has the best program. And so for me, it's not reinventing or coming up with my own plans, but established best practices is something that we should follow. And finally, I would like to say that I participated previously in a 401k program, which I totally believe in. And so while we also have to work on changing the ratio of 1 to 1, as in 1 active employee to 1 retiree, we have to change that ratio to at least 4 or 5 to 1. We also should be looking into a system sort of similar to the 401k, where the employee is empowered to save and get the money when they retire and not have to wait 90 days, 6 months, 2 years for their money. Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much, Diassi Kofelt, candidate.
Yes, good afternoon again. Soraya Diassi-Kofelt, running with Dwight Nicholson, number 3 on the ballot. As a lawyer and judge, I ask a lot of questions. I was the only candidate on the stage who attended both town hall meetings in St. Thomas and St. Croix in February. I also attended a day-and-a-half conference that GERS had here with various representatives and experts on the public pension funds. Why did I attend these town hall meetings and attend the conference? Because I like to sit and learn and ask questions. Again, I am not an expert in public pension funds, but I like to sit and hear and listen to what experts have to say. During the breaks, I went and spoke to the actuaries, which are mathematical experts, and I asked them, what is the bottom line? What can we do in the Virgin Islands? They suggested go to the Department of Interior and the Department of Treasury and ask to borrow the $2.8 billion that is the unfunded liability. Without getting a loan and paying off that unfunded liability, you're going to have a very problematic pension system. So they proposed that very low interest rate. For 10 years, we don't make a payment and make a payment after the 10 years. But that's the long term. The short term is that our government has to pay the contributions every time they're owed. And how does it do that? It needs to have money to do that. And it has to do that by what we say is stopping the cancer of corruption, stopping the cancer of waste and misuse and abuse of the people's money. And that's what we will do. We will go in and eliminate the holes where all the waste, abuse, and the leakage of the people's money are, so that we have money to be used for many different projects, also paying over to GERS. I want to stir the pot a bit. I'm going to call on the governor and lieutenant governor to do something. Not many of you know that a governor and lieutenant governor's pensions are not paid out of GERS. They are paid out of a special account held by the Treasury of the Government of the Virgin Islands. I asked the governor and lieutenant governor to immediately submit a bill to the Senate to have their pensions paid out of the GERS. That will show commitment, just like every other government employee, that you are intent on solving the GERS problem. Dwight and I, once elected governor, we will do that. But we need to have a governor, lieutenant governor who are indeed committed to solving this problem. And if your pension fund is paid out of somewhere else and not GERS, I don't believe you have a true commitment. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Albert Bryant.
We also attended the town hall meetings for the GRS, and I thought when I listened to the problems there that it was a true qualifier whether you qualified to be on this stage or not. So we quickly went to work and we created a plan. You can download the whole plan at votebrianroach.com. The plan seeks to do three things. The first one, to secure the payment for our retirees so they don't have a reduction. And the second one, to make sure that those hardworking people who are in there now, that they get a retirement when they decide to leave government. So the Tier 1 employees who came in before 2005, those employees would get 2.5% a year of their salary up to the point where we enforce the plan. Then it would be reduced to 1.75. So the time you worked, you would always get paid for that. The Tier 2 employees, those that came in after, they would stay the same. The new employees coming to the government would have a lower plan that would reduce the amount of money the government would have to match per employee, giving them a 401k plan that they can borrow from or move to someplace else, and a small annuity to make sure, a monthly check to make sure that they would always have something to rely on when they retire. The biggest thing about this is that the retirement system does not know how much they owe you. If they knew every time one of you retire, they would be able to give you the check the next day. They take years sometimes to calculate how much is owed. So we have to create the system so it's just like Social Security and you're aware of how much you're owed annually and how much you would be paid every time. We also identified 5 different ways to pay for this. Number 1, a new distillery. That's the easy one. Distilleries bring from $40 to $60 million in. On a radio show that I was in, I was told that the administration denied 3 distilleries from coming in, which would have fixed our retirement problem. Rum expansion. Treasury owes us money. They owe us money on the rum cover over because they have been calculating the amount wrong for years. Sports gaming. It's something that has been newly approved by the Supreme Court, and we have the time to do it. The gas excise. If we ever start pumping oil, God willing, we can actually get the gas excise. We were close before, we can go after it again. But the most important thing is that we do it now. If we don't act quickly, we will run out of time and the fund will go broke in 5 years. We've done it before. We've been able to raise $400 million in just 2 years using the programs that we have at the tax incentives in the Virgin Islands and establishing that we would make those funds dedicated to funding the retirement system. Thank you.
You're welcome. Candidate Kenneth Mapp.
Thank you. The issues of the GRS, of course, presented to the Matt Potter administration very early in our tenure in office. We had many confabs with legislators and judges and the community, and a number of reforms were adopted by the legislature. The bottom line is that the unfunded liability is around $2.3 to $2.5 billion. And it takes $100 million to buy 1 year of life for the government employees retirement system. We did an analysis looking at public pension programs across the United States, those that were in trouble and facing insolvency, and looked at their practices in terms of how they avoided insolvency and crafted a plan that we submitted to the legislature. And this plan provides just a basic fix for the government employees retirement system, which are dollars. We raise the cap on taxation of salaries. Government employees do not pay contributions above $65,000 a year. We move that to the same level of salary at the Social Security system, which is $128,000. We raise the level of benefit from $65,000 to $75,000 to give those persons something for their extra contributions. We increase the government contribution at 3% per year over the next 3 years for an additional 9% contribution on the employee rate. We get into public-private partnerships, as we did with ArcLight, which will provide a base minimum of $315 million over a 10-year period. The GRS wants to sell the Havenside Mall. We make a proposal to buy it, and that cash goes in the pool. And the hotel project on St. Thomas, the revenues from that project go into the pool. Siegel Consultant, the actuaries for the government employees retirement system, wrote an opinion that these initiatives that I have just outlined to you will provide an additional 5 years of solvency to the government employees retirement system, moving it from 2024 to 2029. This gives us the opportunity to continue to work on providing additional tranches of benefit. The first administration to reduce the unfunded liability by 20% and adding years of solvency to the government employees retirement system. And we have resolved the 1984 case of the government not paying its contributions to the GRS July of this year.
Thank you very much. You will note this is a little different than a straight form. It's more modified. And I want to make this as seamless as possible. The rebut is 1 minute, and it will go down the line just like we were. And after that, there will be redirect. If you want to use it, you can. If you not, fine. The rebut will start off with candidate Dr. Stark.
Thank you. Talk is cheap. And I say talk is cheap because a person can come here in this forum and just about utter anything, spew anything from the mouth, throw out figures, throw out numbers. The GRS system have a problem. I have not seen anything tangible take place that would contribute to improve the health of the GRS system. As it stands right now, the actuaries and the board members, and I was in attendance to those forums that the GRS system had. I think there's one thing that was missing in that whole equation, and that's that the actuaries actually indicated that the best case scenario for the GRS system was to be able to achieve a $1.7 billion loan with the lowest possible interest rate. The United States Congress just created a fund especially to bail out pension systems. We need to explore that possibility and take some kind of direction from the professionals.
Thank you, sir. Candidate Smith.
With all the discussion, one still walks away without a solution. Because the fact is, no one person can stand up here and tell you that I have a solution for GRS. That is just not plausible and it's not feasible. We hear about where the system is now and where the monies have been let, but the fact is, for a year or more, there were no contributions. So part of it is commitment by the plan sponsor. The other part is ensuring that we identify with all of the players a way going forward. Everything we're hearing is not pie in the sky, some version of it might happen. But this could only happen with all of us coming together feasibly and establishing a timeline and ensuring that legislation goes and that there is a commitment with political will to ensure that this happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Moser.
Yeah, look, I believe I do have a solution. I discussed it with Mr. Nibbs on the radio a few weeks ago. He surprisingly thought it made sense and was going to go back and run the numbers. I haven't heard from him. You've heard some thinly disguised cuts in benefits, an increase in contributions. I'm talking about no cuts in benefits and no increases in contribution. Just a quick word on the gasoline excise tax. I went through that with Donna Christensen. There is no such thing. Okay, gasoline goes into the U.S. tax-free. And Haven site. Okay, the government has, it's in the government now. The GERS is the government. You can shift things back and forth within the government. It doesn't increase the total amount of money. It doesn't generate any money that's not already there. It's just moving things between one pocket and another pocket and somehow expecting that to create more net money. Okay, so nothing is gained overall by the government by any of those maneuvers between government agents. Thank you.
You're welcome. Candidate Millen Young.
We often hear the phrase that we don't have a revenue generation problem. What we have is a spending problem. And I actually believe that's the case. We go through the motions every year to develop a fiscal year budget, and we're supposed to put monies away, we're supposed to pay our bills, and then someone in the administration decides they're gonna spend it another way. To address a situation such as this, you pay. When I say I make things happen, I do. I don't just wait and wait and wait. That this administration has done 3 whole years before saying, let's meet with Mr. Nibbs. And I like to say, I've met with Mr. Nibbs and his staff and the board several times. I know the problem, but it really takes a collective will by all, including and first with the administration, the plan sponsor. Pay your bills.
Thank you. DSC candidate, DSC Kofeld.
Yes, the last possible alternative should be any type of cuts. The tier 1 who have retired, they are already having a cut, 1.5%, because they're not getting the cost of living increases. Tier 2 have already been cut by over 30%. So the last possible thing to think about is cutting those benefits. Also, what we're dealing with is a system that has to be taken under control. And as I mentioned, we are going to do that. I'm still waiting for the governor to say whether he and the lieutenant governor will have their pension paid out of GERS or continue in this special private account, which will continue indefinitely, and no worries if GERS goes solvent. In regard to the 401k at the forum, last month that GERS and the private public pensioning systems had, there is no way to have a 401k. What happens with a 401k is the money's taken out of the system, so GERS doesn't have the money. Government pays the money into a separate account. So we don't want to take money out of GERS. We want to continue to fund GERS. So 401k system is not viable. It was tried in West Virginia. They went from a public benefit system to a contribution system, which is the 401k, and they were forced to go back to the benefit system. So we don't want to go to the 401k. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Albert Bryan.
Currently, there are about 9,000 people who are working and 8,000 people who are retired. Soon that number is going to be upside down. There'll be more people retired than there are working. We cannot afford the system. For anybody up here to tell you that they don't have a plan is just playing crazy. You have to have an approach for this, and right now. You can hire a task force. We've been talking for 20 or 30 years. We know the system was going broke. Creating the 401k system allows the government to put 10% of your salary rather than 20% into the GRS system and 10% for you. The other thing about the system is right now we can't pay what we owe the government. How are we going to raise what the government owes the GRS? How are we going to raise it 10% more? That would make the cost of an employee's fringe for the government 55%. So that means if we hire somebody for $20,000, we'd be paying them $35,000 in order to be employed by the government. We simply can't afford it. We have to make sure that we identify the funding sources and we fix the system now.
Thank you. Candidate Kenneth Mapp.
Thank you. I just want to address a few of the comments here. This administration has not laid off any 1,000 government employees. I don't know where that phantom number came from. In point of fact, we have hired over 1,679 employees. Again, this repeating refrain about the government should pay what it's owed. The GRS sued the government in 1984 for outstanding contributions, and it's a matter of court record. In July of 2018, the government resolved that case, paying the GRS all that it owed, and I ordered that they pay the 7% rate of return on the outstanding amount, and we continue to contribute to the system every 2 weeks when we cut the payroll. No, 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 the governor's and lieutenant governor's pension should not go to the GRS. Currently, we pay to the GRS while we're working about the same rate of the 20-year employee. That money goes to the GRS. When the governor, lieutenant governors retire, they get their pension from interest earned on government accounts. Adding more obligation to the GRS doesn't help the GRS. Adding money solves the problem.
Thank you. We're going to go as seamless as possible again. I just want to caution you on the redirect. Remember, this is your opportunity to take exception to whoever you want with reference to their approach.
I would just like,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to remind the audience to please remain silent.
All right. So Senator, candidate Donna Starr, you start off with your redirect. Redirect, right. In other words, if there is any exception to what you were hearing,
Okay.
remember,
no.
they're going to be able to come back on you, so whatever.
No, I
they're
understand.
all-
No, I understand. Yeah, perhaps I may have disseminated some information, and that 1,000 resonates with a lot of people. That 1,000 rekindles something, but we'll get to that on another corner. But I must say that it wasn't Donna Storg or anyone else who have said that the GRS system was not going to pay government or retirees. It was Mr. Nibbs, I believe, just publicly stated after or subsequent to a forum that we had that said the new retirees were not going to be paid until the government pay the system. So I think that needs to be established on the record to demonstrate that there is not a commitment to the GRS system.
That doesn't mean it's true.
Thank you, candidate Smith.
They are losing their homes. They cannot buy medication they need. Austin Nibbs, GERS Administrator, October 5th, St. Thomas Source. We're talking a lot, but the fact is there is no plan. There is no plan. So what we must do is get together. We must get together with seriousness and make this happen. The system is scheduled to die in 5 years. The plans that we hear do not identify a clear funding source within that 5-year period. So what it is talk. Thank you.
Candidate Mosler.
Okay, so the contributing to rum cover over bonds and the income off of those and the not taking GERS money for income taxes but leaving it in the fund is an immediate funding source, you could say, and does work to solve the problem. So I want to just get back to the idea of GERS investments. By buying delinquent property taxes, they pay 8%, but they accrue at 8%. The GERS needs long-term investments, and so they will never throw anyone out of their house to get their money. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Millen Young.
So I'd just like to briefly add that I will ask my colleague next to me if she would help me to lobby my colleagues at the legislature, because I actually do have legislation that calls for exactly what she said, which is to have the governor and the lieutenant, the lieutenant governor's pension be at the GRS. I hear what the governor says. It's something that we need to vet and we need to discuss, because we can't just take someone's word for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Diassi Colfeld.
A governor, lieutenant governor must know what the people are going through. And the only way that a governor, lieutenant governor will know that if their pensions are coming out of GERS 2. They will make sure that that GERS system is solvent, and no other way will that happen. Also, the governor referred to a study that was a Mercer study that was commissioned in 2016. I read that study. Why did he wait until 2018, just before the election, to not come up with his proposal to make GERS solvent for a period of time? You had that from 2016, Governor.
Thank you. Candidate Albert Bryan.
We actually created a plan. We went to Gruff, we went to the St. Croix retirees. We sat with Austin Nibbs and his staff. They reviewed the plan. They said that if only the 5 funding sources we identified work, the plan would be fixed and there would be no need to adjust it. We're talking about immediate reduction of the unfunded liability by doing things today. Now, the other thing I want to say is we could have this done, but it's going to take political will. And it's a situation where it's all or nothing. If we don't act now, we'll be in a situation where we not only won't have retiree monies, we won't have insurance for them either.
Thank you, candidate.
Thank you.
Kenneth Mapp.
This issue about rum companies solving the GRS is bogus as well. Since the Diageo agreement, the footprint for revenues for the government on rum companies has been shot. In 2003 to 2007, rum revenues after expenses from one rum company was $95 million to $115 million a year. The check to us is $251 million this year, and after we pay the bonuses to the rum companies and pay their expenses, the general fund now only sees $17 million a year. And Puerto Rico is given 48% incentive on rum, so they're not going to come for less incentive.
Thank you very much. We're going to shift gears now and try to keep it again as seamless as we possibly can. The second question has to do with the economy. Within the last decade, with the Great Recession in the United States, the closure of Hovensa Oil Refining, and our historically high utility rates, the general fund of the government of the Virgin Islands has experienced a drastic decline in revenues. And our independent instrumentalities, the GRS, WAPA, waste management, and our hospital are approaching bankruptcy. First question, keeping in mind our inability to borrow money as a result of our negative bond ratings, what is your plan to stabilize the government, the condition of the government of the Virgin Islands? The second question is, what are you going to do to turn the economy around and increase revenues to our treasury? That one is going to be for Mr. Smith, candidate Smith.
Thank you for the question. For very long, we've been having discussions about reforming government. We know that our expenses far outpace the revenues that come in. So the government must reform. We need to right-fit government. We need to reduce the levels of redundancy. We need to align our tax revenues to the amount of services that we have. The Smith-Frederick team has a particular approach to this, and that is, one, we look at diversifying our tourism product. Medical tourism.
Yeah.
Medical tourism is an area that we must seek. We also must look closely at incubating our healthcare sector. The Smith-Frederick team believes that we must move our hospitals, the governance, from under its current political boards and move it under the University of the Virgin Islands. Establish a university system of hospitals, include in that the medical school, and also move toward medical tourism. We have hundreds of millions of dollars in the healthcare field that just leaks out of this economy to other economies. And the only way that we can capture this and use that money to re-enter this local economy is by looking directly at healthcare. Agribusiness, transshipment, and developing small business. Incubating our small businesses is an approach that we would take. Can you repeat the second part of that question, please?
What we're looking for, what are you going to do to turn the economy around and increase much-needed revenues to the Treasury?
The first thing that we would do is move all of the economic development entities from its current location under the lieutenant governor. We have a lieutenant governor that's an expert in banking and insurance, the only one. And we should leverage that to look at our tax base, reform how we invest and bring businesses in, and become much more business friendly and business efficient. We should not have to wait 2 and 3 and 4 months to get contract through, or 2 and 3 and 4 months, sometimes up to a year to get a license. So that is the approach that we would take. We would also look at technology. as a field to bring in. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Mosler.
Just quickly for your information, I owned a bank and was a director for 25 years, and I owned an insurance company and was a director for 5 years, so good handle on the business. All right, anyway, and I visited the Fed regularly for 20 years. You're going to hear a recurring theme from me, and that is we get to keep our own income taxes. It's the mirror tax code, and there are ways we can use that in our favor, and if you've got 3 hours, I'll go into all of them. But the first one I'm going to jump on is sports tourism, and it works like this. You look at a team like the Spurs that has a payroll of $115 million a year, like all the NBA teams, and they're paying approximately $50 million a year in federal income taxes to Washington. That's $1 million per week, approximately, okay? And if they came down here to train, they would be working here. And if you're working here and earning your money here and paying your taxes to Washington, that is our money. They will transfer it to us with the correct paperwork being filled out. Okay, so that means if we get the Spurs to train here, we get $1 million a week. If they come down for a 12-week training period, we get $12 million. Knowing that, we can then find somebody who's connected to the Spurs. Anybody come to mind? And we can talk to the team and say, look, if you can come down here and train and for 12 weeks, we have $12 million we're going to get from the federal government that we can turn over to you to build your sports facility and have a wonderful place to train, a world-class place to train. And if it's a 5-year contract to come down here, you're talking about $60 million to do this. All right, and so now we have a massive competitive advantage because we get to keep our own income taxes. It gives us a bargaining tool to use to get these kinds of businesses into the Virgin Islands. And this can be used on many, many levels. It works for matching funds also. So if there's a $100 million project available that requires $10 million in matching funds, okay, we can look at this and say, all right, if we spend $100 million and pay $70 million in wages and salaries down here, we are going to get $20 million in income taxes. $10 million can go to the matching funds, and the other $10 million would go to the Treasury. We can go to a bank and we can tie the two together. You lend us the $10 million for the matching funds, we'll securitize the arrangement so that as people get paid, the withholding goes to you to pay your loan back. Thank you.
You're welcome. Candidate Millen Young.
Thank you for the question. Having spent almost 8 years in the legislature, I have spent my time advocating for economic development, and so consider myself someone who has worked very diligently on that subject. But as a legislator, I'm a policymaker. I don't get to implement as the executive's branch does. And so I am eager to be your governor so that I can implement some of these measures as well as others that are on the books, beginning with the enterprise and commercial zones, which as opposite to the EDC program, where the EDC program actually attracts multimillionaires, the enterprise zone deals with mom and pop stores. Whether you have 1 employee, 7 employees, or 10 employees, you get stackable tax incentives. And the enterprise zones are located in downtown Charlotte-Amalie, Frederiksted, and Christiansted. And these towns all need revitalizing. And by the way, poor Charlotte-Amalie has been taking forever to get going. And I see that sometimes you go to Frederiksted, and I don't have to tell you, it needs a breath of fresh air over there. Marine tourism expansion. We used to have a marine tourism that brought into the territory $80 to $100 million a year. Before the hurricanes, it was bringing in $20 million. And so there were some laws that affected that, but it has been reversed. But we need to make an effort to make sure that we bring back those dollars to our territories. Sports tourism, I was involved with the sports tourism policy in the legislature, and we like to see it be realized because I missed that, I'm sorry. I would like to see it realized because in terms of sports, you know the excitement that brings and the attention that brings. And the sports fans follow their teams, and they come to spring training. They fill up the hotels. They fill up they go to our restaurants, etc. Then we also have agriculture, which has been long forgotten, but I've had many measures, including the incubator support system for our farmers, because they do what they do, right? They farm, but the farm to table, farm to hotels, farm to restaurants, when our tourists come, they want to eat local. And so we want to empower our people to earn just like the big businesses earn. And so you begin to spur economic development because you have spending power by everyone, not just the multimillionaires. Thank you for the question.
You're welcome for the response, Diasi Cofield.
Yes. The first part of the question is, how do we stabilize the financial condition of the government? We have to stop as a government spending and spending and spending as if there's no tomorrow. We see the governor with all the immense expenses, and that has to stop. We have to have financial accountability and transparency. Until the governor and the rest of the administration follows Virgin Islands law for open records, for the Sunshine Act for open government meetings, and to comply fully with the Government Transparency Act of 2012, which has not yet been implemented, we will not have financial accountability and transparency that we need. We have to stop up all the leaks. We have to stop the cancer of corruption and the waste, misuse, and abuse of the people's money. We have a lot of money coming in from the federal government, but it's leaking out with this corruption and the waste, abuse, and misuse of the people's money. The second part of the question is, how do we turn the economy around? Small businesses will be the foundation for turning the economy around. Our people going into small businesses. You will have a government administration with Dwight and I who completely support small businesses. We come out of small businesses. I'm a second generation small business owner in the Virgin Islands. Dwight's family has owned a small business for over 40 years. We know the sacrifices that have to be made. We know how small businesses are being taxed and taxed and taxed while big businesses are given all the tax breaks. It's very difficult for small businesses to survive. We want to make it much easier for you to establish a small business. Come in quickly, you can get a business license. We will have a very efficient system. And to renew the business license, also that will be quick and efficient. We have to make sure also that we attract businesses from the outside. But notice how I say that's after we build up our small business community. A lot of the candidates put emphasis on bringing businesses from the outside, not until we help our people to develop our small businesses first. Yes, I see the governor as a chief salesperson to go out and to sell the Virgin Islands, to be the #1 place to live, work, and visit in the Virgin Islands, and come and invest your money. But when there's corruption that's a cancer, outside investors do not want to come in because they cannot predict what the future of the Virgin Islands will be. That's why we keep coming back to fighting corruption, to make sure that we eliminate this cancer that is plaguing our government. And we will have not only our small businesses revived, but we will also have investors willing to come in. Thank you.
Thank you for your response, candidate Albert Bryan.
In the Virgin Islands, 80 people, 80, pay 40% of all the income tax collected. Out of 356 million, 80 people pay $120 million. If you add another 3,000 people, they pay almost 70% of our income tax. What should be scary to every one of us, it used to be 160 people paying that 40% of the income tax. So the first answer to bring money in to our some 200 and something structural deficit is to attract high net worth individuals to our islands that pay over $1 million in income tax a year, number one. How do you do that? By strengthening our healthcare system, number one. So millions and millions of dollars are escaping the Virgin Islands every day when each and every one of us look for our healthcare needs outside of the territory. Ensuring that the hospital, that we have confidence in it, and we know the competency of the individuals that are there will bring millions of new dollars to our economy. We spend $20 million a year or more to bring tourists here to the Virgin Islands to spend their money one time, and $1 million a year to tell people about our wonderful tax credits that we have. We're talking about we have money problems. In 2001, Turnbull couldn't make the budget of $500 million. Through the tax program, by year 2005, he had doubled the Virgin Islands budget to $800 million, adding another $400 million in new revenue through the tax programs alone. We have to make sure that we leverage our assets. Right now, St. Croix has tremendous assets. We have 3 power plants in that refinery. We have a deep water port in Martin Marietta. We have a 10,000-foot runway. We have a port in Gallows Bay that has not been dredged now for 5 years. We've been talking about it, and a stadium that can't get built. We have to put these assets to work. We have 400 acres of hotel property right there in Port Authority. In the Brian Roach administration, we will be working to put those community-based assets to work. Putting people to work is the last part. Our recommendation to have 3.0 students get a free college education raises the level of education for our workforce from 17% to 27% college graduates. We have $6 million now that we could be investing in our workforce training. And finally, instead of investing $10 million in a hotel, we could give 400 Virgin Islanders a $25,000 tax credit in order to create new homes for themselves and widen the amount of housing we have in the Virgin Islands, not in hotels, in our people.
Thank you for your response, candidate Kenneth Mapp.
Thank you. The base way to grow the economy in the U.S. Virgin Islands is to rebuild the infrastructure and drastically reduce the cost of energy. Virgin Islanders pay about 36 cents per kilowatt hours for electricity, or 3 times the cost of the highest cost of power on the U.S. mainland, which is New York, at 13 cents a kilowatt hour. Our work with our partners in the national government is giving us the opportunity to drive the cost of power down and giving us the opportunity to completely rebuild the infrastructure. These plans are presented to the Congress and to the Trump administration, which they have supported and are supporting with dollars. In addition, it is the governor's job to go out and sell the Virgin Islands and to create partnerships of private sector investments. We have brought private sector partners to the table to completely rebuild and expand horse racing in the territory. Folks make a lot of jokes about the Paul Joseph Stadium, and we're going to talk about that today. We now know that the Paul Joseph Stadium delay saved the stadium because the mound of dirt has proven that the structure will continue to sink, so that we now know that the foundation for Paul Joseph must be a pile-driven foundation, and that's what it will be, and it will be constructed. We have gone the gamut of having the sports fitness complex right here at the University of the Virgin Islands, which would be designated as the new shelter that will be named after Tim Duncan, because we will no longer use the St. Croix Educational Complex. The ability to sit back and to become a candidate and to just spew information out without it being checked, or to have to do the work, makes it fun. It makes it something that you could laugh about. But to just spend the government money, put it into the system and say, go so you could say you built something, is not prudent. Candidate Kofeld talks a lot about corruption. How many times have you called the tip line of the federal government and reported corruption in the Virgin Islands? Just hemming corruption doesn't make it corruption. If you know that there are corrupt acts in the community, call the anonymous tip line of the federal government and report it so that they can respond to it.
Okay, we're going to shift here again, and we're going to go to rebut. You've got 1 minute, Mr. Smith. No, what do you want? No, the next question was asked of
No,
Smith.
he didn't ask. He didn't.
So he goes
didn't get yours.
first now. You'll go right back to you. You'll have rebut.
So you're saying that I would not have an
It'll go,
opportunity to answer the
absolutely.
question?
It'll go right back to you. You started with the first question.
You're not
So,
understanding what I'm saying.
you're not understanding.
You started with the first question based on your drawing.
He didn't.
He started with the second.
Okay,
Yeah,
you started with the
Smith.
second.
Smith, it's Smith.
Okay, excuse me.
Smith.
Holland does make mistakes once in a while.
Okay, thank you. I was starting to believe there was some political
I
thing
like
going on
that.
here.
No. Believe me, no conspiracy.
You know, the only thing that I grab out the air are mosquitoes. Definitely not numbers and throw numbers out. The last time I checked, I believe that it was more than 36 cents a kilowatt hour that we're paying in the Virgin Islands. But I guess someone can make that correction. You know, I heard the name. We're talking about stabilizing the economy, and of course, most of us would agree that this is about establishing public-private partnership for the purpose of bringing new investment to the Virgin Islands. But there's something that stood out for me here, because when we're talking about being a business-friendly environment, I can take you back in history, and I believe it was candidate Mosler spoke about Timmy Duncan and the Spurs coming here for training. If you recall some years ago, Timmy Duncan came to our shores. There was a package proposed to afford him some exemptions here in the Virgin Islands. There was in fact a battle between myself and the local or IRB at that time, where I was trying to establish with them that we should in fact pass the package and let them deal with their issues after. It was a native son that decided that he would contradict the position and write the state of Texas a letter relinquishing all rights to our native son being able to come here to the Virgin Islands to pay his taxes here, because he was in fact domiciled here. He had established domicile here by owning properties here on the island of St. Croix. So I go back to this issue of being business friendly, and sometimes we fail ourselves. We fail ourselves. In order to stabilize this economy, we're going to have to establish relationships and make sure that we have a business-friendly environment. Thank you.
You're welcome. We're now dealing with the rebuttal. Mr. Smith, candidate Smith, rebuttal, 1 minute.
Yeah, there's only, this is miraculous. And I tell you what, we've sat through, I know I've sat through several forums, and forum by forum, the ideas merge. So I want to congratulate the Brian Roach team for adapting our healthcare plan. It is necessary that we move to stabilize our healthcare system as a means of stimulating this economy. Now there were 2014, there was an election, there were some talking points. And I'm hearing these talking points again. The fact is that we had a contract for Paul Lee Joseph that was executed, then it stopped. A year later, the contract came back. 3 years later, there's a pound of dirt. Now, miraculously, it's saving the government monies that would have been expended. Our issue is execution. And I think that we need to focus on execution, because the only way that we're going to stabilize is if we use the money the way the monies are supposed to be used in the time that the money is supposed to be used. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. And Mr. Mosler, you're dealing with rebuttal.
For me, the children come first. Our biggest problem is that we took away a perfectly good stadium from our children that we're now squabbling about. So how do we bring in these hundreds of millions of dollars? We know now, after the last few debates, that Lime Tree did a big no-no. And so what I'm proposing at this point is that as governor, I will go to New York with my new Attorney General, Tregenza Roach, right there. Thank you. and we will have a friendly chat with the senior partners and who don't want to be known as having done business that way. They don't go into governments. They don't conspire with senior officials to defraud the legislator to get what they want done. They're a $20 billion responsible company. But look, we're here. We all want to work together. We want the refinery there. We want the business. How about just putting the tax rate back up to the 17.5% from 12, and the SCC doesn't need to know about anything that happened down here, okay? And those kinds of friendly talks can result in getting back to where we were under the 2015 agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your response, Mellon Young.
So I practice what I preach. And to me, it doesn't matter what island or what district we're talking about, I'm going to be fair. Sometimes when we talk about deals, there are deals and not projects for a reason. And back when I was a freshman senator in the 29th legislature, we were talking about a stadium. And I stood my ground, and I stood my ground. They called me names. They always call me names. But guess what? I stood my ground. The stadium, that bill went through. The next year, arrests. Arrests came down. I stood my ground, I was happy. But I'm not happy when I have to be vindicated a year or two later or called names because, oh, you were not for this district or the other district. I'm always going to be fair. I just wanted to mention that my running mate, Edgar Bengoa, has dedicated almost a quarter century to St. Croix, and about 20 of those years to St. Croix in the St. Croix Chamber of Commerce. He has fought a lot for the economy here in the district of St. Croix. And so there's no question where my choice lies. Thank you.
Thank you for your response, Diassi. Kofeld, your rebut.
Yes, my colleague here, Mr. Bryan, mentioned about strengthening our healthcare system in order to attract outside investors. And that's what bothers me. We have to strengthen our healthcare system for we, the people, first. That's what our priority should be. And yes, our healthcare system needs to be strengthened, but how could we continue to be victims and not even have an operating restroom in the emergency room at the Juan Louis Hospital? Ask yourself that. In regard to the governor's request for itemizations of corruption, Governor, I don't have to witness them. I read all the federal audits. I read all the local audits. Did you read the newspaper today? The Daily News and the Avis, I believe, had articles about the Bureau of Motor Vehicles and what was going on there. It appears to be some sort of a scheme. So somebody was being paid money, it appears, based on what is written in the report in regard to registering vehicles. And I have a page here right now from the 2017 report by the Inspector General for the Department of Interior and then our local Inspector General about all the discrepancies in the Public Finance Authority.
So in order to have a strong economy, we agree that we have to make sure that we rebuild and recover, but we have to do things simultaneously. We cannot be a government like the MAP administration that shut down every single project that we had. Within the first 90 days of taking office, we will send out an RFP for all private sector shovel-ready projects to ensure that we have projects that are going in the private sector on every single island, and we can use this CDBG money and our government resources to leverage them in order to make them happen. It is important because when MAP took office, he shut down the pier, he shut down the Water Island project, he shut down a number of other projects, including the Polly Joseph Stadium. And the last time I remember, Governor, 4 years ago, you were the one spewing a bunch of information out into the atmosphere in order to get elected. So we come up here with solid plans, with research that are ready to take action in this government to make sure that we change course and create a Virgin Islands for all of us. You said you were going to reduce the light bill by 50%, and yet it continues to go up. And we understand now that the PSC is being held at bay because there's another hike that needs to be done, but is holding off till the end of the election.
Thank you.
Candidate Kenneth Mapp.
I shut down projects that the Young administration, of which you were part, was destroying, including the Department of Labor. Ms. Kofeld, the Inspector General wrote the report on the Bureau of Motor Vehicles because the director, Mr. Olive, of the Bureau of Motor Vehicles filed a formal request for the review so that we understand what took place there and we will deal with it. I would just recommend that folks, and I would just say this about the Paulie Joseph Stadium, Molito, I just get the contract and read it, and you will see what the program requires, why the dirt is there, how long it was supposed to be there, and what will be taking place there at the site. Because it's not a stalled project by any stretch of the imagination. The building and the growth and the rebirth of this Virgin Islands economy is going to happen because we're going to rebuild the infrastructure and modernize and mitigate or harden the Water and Power Authority using renewable energy sources, using microgrid systems, and putting much of the infrastructure underground.
All right, thank you very much again for
Well,
your response.
I just want
We're going to get you in now. Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
You correct me.
I cheated you by a minute in your
I know,
answer,
I
so I'm
know.
going to give you 2 minutes for your rebuttal.
I know, and I would not have used those strong words. I don't think you cheated me. I just thought it was an oversight.
It was an oversight.
Thank you.
Nothing intentional.
Thank you. Thank you. And I guess if I may reference, he cut me by 1 minute and actually disrupted my thoughts on the second part of that question. So I accept it. It's not a problem. I wanted to just respond and going back and piggybacking on what I mentioned about this relationship with our native son, Timmy Duncan, and then moving into sports tourism and recognizing that sports tourism can play a major role. But let's not forget even entertainment tourism, because I think there's a need to breathe some life into the Virgin Islands once again. I mean, we can venture the issue of the marine industry, the Maritime Academy, and really trying to enhance our local product to include improving our infrastructure, which is a major issue. We don't want tourists coming here to our shores and taking pictures to send back saying that the Virgin Islands is still in total disarray, or the infrastructure is still dilapidated in so many different areas. And it all goes back to that, once again, that issue
Yeah,
of
well, he's gonna start with
public-private
the
partnership.
rebuttals.
But I think that we're undervaluing the impact of sports tourism and entertainment tourism. And when you look at sports tourism in particular, there is a need for us to recognize that there are certain sports that we can incorporate in our strategic plan when it comes to sports tourism, such as even cricket. Cricket is one of the biggest spectator sports right now throughout the Caribbean. And we can talk, we're talking about a multi-purpose stadium where you could play multiple sports. Let's not forget cricket and cricket's potential. I think it would have tremendous impact to the economy, and I think it would lure a lot of people to our shores to want to come here. And I believe that the Virgin Islands, being the trailblazers, we were first and foremost when it came to any form of entertainment. Other islands have actually taken that first place slot as the destination for entertainment, having these major festivals, and where have we lost sight? So the Donna Storg-Hansen team, number 2 on the ballot, would like to rekindle that and show you its true benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. There's one more rebuttal, Mr. Smith.